I've been meditating a lot on Psalm chapter 1, and I keep finding new insights that show up for me, and it's been very impactful just to meditate on it and draw all the truth from it. So even though we touched on it, I think over a month ago, I want to come back to it and just look at it from a different angle. What we talked about in Psalm 1 was the concept of meditation. And what that psalm basically says is the person who learns to meditate on God's truth, learns to meditate on God's truth, is like a tree that's planted by a river, and their leaf never withers. They bear fruit every season. Everything they do, it's growth oriented, that they are blessed. A person who learns to meditate on God's truth grows, bears fruit, and they are blessed. And that word blessed in the Hebrew means total fulfillment and complete well-being. And that word meditate in the Hebrew is the word hagah. It means to ponder deeply, to actively engage a subject or a topic or a thought. It means to vocalize it both internally and externally and to attend to it carefully. So biblical meditation is different from some other forms of meditation. Some other forms of meditation will encourage you to empty the mind and focus on self or environment or quietness. Biblical meditation doesn't want you to empty the mind. Rather, it wants you to fill the mind with God's truth, that you are saturated in it, that you are absorbing it like a tree is absorbing the water and producing fruit. You're absorbing God's truth and it's producing something in and through you. That that word is incarnating in you and it becomes flesh. It becomes fruit in your life. So here's one big idea that I want to communicate this morning, and that is everyone meditates. Everyone. I used to think I don't have the attention span to meditate. Meditation's just not for me. But if we just replace the word meditate with ruminate, because they're the same thing, everyone meditates. Every human meditates. Every human meditates all the time, consistently, day and night, because they ruminate, or you could replace this with self-talk. So we're constantly meditating, or we're constantly ruminating. We're constantly having a conversation with ourselves. This is not something that's reserved only for deeply spiritual people. This is a human practice that everyone does. So for a person to say, I don't meditate, that's just not for me, that's not accurate. Everyone is pondering something deeply all the time. Everyone is actively engaging a topic all the time. Everyone is vocalizing something internally and externally all the time. Everyone is focusing their attention on some thought, some self-talk, some concept, some topic. Everyone meditates. So it's not a question of, are you meditating? It's a question of, what are you meditating on? What are you ruminating on? What Psalm 1 says, the person who learns to meditate, ruminate, self-talk, ponder deeply, carefully attend to, articulate internally and externally God's truth, there's this picture of this flourishing tree that always has a source, that bears fruit, that grows, that is blessed, which means total fulfillment, complete well-being. So if we're not meditating on that, we're meditating on something else. And we'll talk about the implications of that in a moment. But if we learn to ruminate, meditate on truth rather than non-truth, if we learn to meditate on God's truth, then there's a couple of impacts. There's a couple of promises that Psalm 1 talks about. The first one is what we just said, blessing. So total fulfillment and complete well-being. Second, fruit. Person who learns to meditate consistently, Psalm 1 actually says day and night, consistently, because we're always meditating. We especially meditate at night. And some of our most darkest stinking thinking happens at night. And so we're meditating day and night. We're meditating consistently. It's saying that the person who learns to meditate on God's truth day and night consistently will be blessed. So total fulfillment, complete well-being, and they're going to bear fruit. Well, what's the fruit? The fruit is the fruit of the Spirit. So it's these 9 attributes of God that begin to be produced in our life. And so let's just take a look at these for a minute. The very first one listed for the fruit of the Spirit, these are found in the book of Galatians. The very first one is called love, and the specific Greek word for that is agape, which is unconditional, no strings attached, sacrificial, selfless love that's focused on the needs and well-being of the other, not self. That's agape love. It's the kind of love that God has for us. And the only way we can have that kind of love is for God's love to be produced in us, for it to flow through us like a river flowing and producing love in our life. We can't manufacture this on our own. It could be argued that all 9 of these fruit really are just an expression or emanate from the main thing, which is love. 1 John says God is love. What is God? God is love. The total summation of who God is God is love. And if we're going to love in a true agape way, we need his love to empower us. We need the Spirit to produce God's love in us. It's the kind of love that our partners want, need, and deserve, but we don't have what it takes to give it to them. So we need God to actually love our partner through us. Every morning, one of my spiritual disciplines is the same prayer. God, please empower me to love and serve Jacqueline well today, because I don't have in and of myself what it takes to love her properly. Agape love comes from God. It is a fruit of the Spirit. It's produced in me through God. When you're spiritually fit, like our program talks about, you're going to have these 9 attributes growing in your life because they come from God. They're the character of God. They're the attributes of God, but they're all really stemming and emanating from this one, and that is love. The other 8 are an expression of agape love. Next is joy and peace. These first 3 really refer to our relationship with God, that he is the one that gives us love, agape love. He's the one that gives us joy, and no circumstance can take it away. And he's the one that gives us peace. It comes from him. It's found in our intimacy with him. He produces these 3 things in our life because it's who he is. He is the author. He distributes these things. He produces these things in us. The next 3 refer to our relationship with others. So these become incredibly relevant to our coupleship and to how we treat our partner. When the fruit of the Spirit is being produced in our life, when we are learning to meditate, ruminate, self-talk, God's truth, we are blessed, and it produces this fruit in our life, including we are patient with our partners, we are kind to our partners, and we do good deeds towards our partners. It's how we relate to others, especially those that are in proximity to us, like our family, like our children, like our partners. The last 3 are how we relate to ourselves, our relationship with ourselves. So when God is producing his character in us and we're spiritually fit, then we are going to be gentle, which means humble. We're not full of ego. We're not prideful and focused on self. We are faithful. That means honest. So every lie begins when we lie to ourselves first, then we lie to others. So being faithful, being a person of integrity, being honest begins with a lack of self-deception before we deceive others. So this is an internal quality in the way we relate to ourselves. Yes, we may lie to others, but it always begins with a lie to self. Always. We always first lie to ourselves. We deceive ourselves, then we deceive others. And then self-control. This is an internal attribute. Emotional intelligence could be argued as simply a result of spiritual fitness. It's when we have self-control, the Spirit is actually in control and we're submitted to him. He is producing self-control in the way we relate to ourselves. Okay. We press pause before we act. That's self-control. So when we learn to meditate, ruminate, self-talk day and night on God's truth instead of anything else, we are blessed, we produce fruit, and that fruit impacts the way we relate to God, others, and self. It all begins with our relationship with God. And it's really all about love. And all of these are an expression of that. The third promise for the person who learns to meditate on God's truth consistently is growth. You're going to see an upward trend in all 9 of these, that you will be more loving next year than you were this year. You'll be greater joy, more peace, more patient, kinder, more good deeds, more humility, more honesty, more self-control. There's an upward trend. This person grows. The way the Psalm 1 puts it is, they prosper or they grow in everything they do. So there is an upward trend. Now let's contrast it with our natural state. When we ruminate, when we meditate on anything, I don't care what it is, anything but God's truth, we get the antithesis of the fruit of the Spirit. We get the fruit of self. So if you just go through life on autopilot, you're going to have all of these 9 fruit of self. It doesn't take any effort. This happens naturally. This is the human condition. This is what happens when you leave God out. You will be like this. So notice this contrast, because you become what you meditate on. That's who you become. And so if you've been for decades now meditating on and ruminating on anything but truth, then this is what you end up getting. And notice how each one is the antithesis of the characteristics of God. This comes from the Spirit and only from the Spirit. You can't produce this on your own. This comes from just being a fallen human. This comes from self. And meditating, ruminating on anything. You're like a tree that withers. There's no growth. There's no fruit, not that fruit of the Spirit, and the leaves wither. And there's no constant source or supply of water that produces the growth. So you end up with, instead of agape love, conditional love, and eventually resentment because they don't meet our expectations. So this is the way we love when we don't have agape love. I love you as long as you blank. If you do this for me, I'll do this for you. And when they don't meet our expectations, we resent them. Instead of joy, we have misery and a whole bunch of shame. Lots of shame. Instead of peace, we have chaos and anxiety and agitation in our life. Instead of patient, we are impatient and we're reactive. So this is relationship to God, relationship to others, and relationship to self. How do we relate to our partners? We are impatient and we are reactive. And instead of kindness, we are abusive and we are full of anger towards them. Instead of doing good to them, we are cruel to them and we intentionally hurt them. This takes no effort. This is the natural inclination of our heart. This is what happens when we leave God out. And when I say meditation, I'm not talking about a 10-minute check the box practice every morning and then you move on to the fruit of self. What Psalm 1 talks about is, blessed is the man who learns to meditate on God's truth day and night. So this is a way of life. This is a practice. This is consistency. Why? Because we're always meditating. And if we compartmentalize it and okay, I'm going to meditate on truth for 10 minutes and then the rest of the day, I'm going to ruminate on all this other stuff, you're not going to see the fruit of the Spirit. That's not going to happen because we don't live compartmentalized lives. And so when we learn the discipline, the practice of meditating on God's truth consistently throughout the day in everything that we're doing, we begin to see an upward trend of these 9 characteristics in our life that we cannot produce on our own. And we don't get this through effort. The effort is meditating and ruminating and drinking in God's truth. That's the effort. And then He produces this. We don't manufacture this. If we could manufacture this, we don't need a higher power. We could do it on our own. The fact is, I learned really quickly when I started my recovery program. I listed my character defects, which looked a lot like this right here. And I said, okay, I'm going to turn all of these into character assets by trying really hard. Effort, attending more meetings. And the fact is, I failed and I will always fail. I can't, on my own, through human effort, convert these defects into assets. I need these fruit that only come from God's Spirit. I need Him to produce them in me. And the only way I can do that is by being a person who learns to ruminate, meditate, self-talk. The self-talk becomes God talk. My self-talk becomes God talk. That God is constantly speaking to me and it's birthing in me things that I could not produce on my own. But on my own, I can do all these. And so the way I relate to myself, I'm full of ego, pride, man box, whatever, man card, disloyal, dishonest. I lie to myself first and then others. And then I'm out of control, I'm lazy, and I snap at the quickest thing. You see the contrast here? Here's one thing I've noticed. When people turn, and I know this is a general truth, there are some outliers, but as a general rule, if someone lives to be in their 60s, their 70s, and their 80s, you see they're either one of these two things. Because some of the kindest, sweetest, most godliest, most spiritual, beautiful people of character that I love being around are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s because they have spent a lifetime of building these fruit in their life by meditating on truth. Whereas some of the most cruel, miserable, venomous, hate-filled people you'll ever meet are also in their 60s, 70s, and 80s because they have spent decades ruminating on things that don't honor God, and you see them embodying this. Because whatever we meditate on, we become. Now, if this is your current state, it's not that it's too late. This promise still applies to you. If you can begin this practice of not just a meditation practice for a few minutes every morning, but a meditation practice that's intentional all day, that I'm taking one verse, that I'm taking one truth, that I'm taking one concept, and I am reflecting and actively engaging on it, and I'm replacing my self-talk with God talk. As a way of life, you'll begin to see this upward trend of these fruit of the Spirit in your life. So here's some observations that I want to share with you. First of all, when your partner says to you, you're not doing enough in your program, you're not doing enough in your recovery, do you know what they're saying? Let's understand the message that's underneath the message. What they're saying is they're not seeing a change in you. And they're hoping that by working harder and doing more recovery activities, they will see a change. I'll put it to you this way. If your partner was seeing a man who was full of love, joy, peace, the way you related to her was patience, kindness, and goodness, full of love, and this is a person who is humble and honest and has self-control, do you think she would say to you, you're not doing enough in your recovery? Absolutely not. This is actually what she's saying to you. She's praying and hoping to see a change. This is IAD insurance right here. You want to stop all IAD? You need the fruit of the Spirit. When you're living like this, when God's producing this in you, you don't need to call a timeout anymore when your partner is dysregulated because you have self-control. Because you're not going to go into these defects here. You're spiritually fit. Now, like while God is building these in you and you're growing in all 9 of these, you may need to call a timeout so that you don't harm her. But you want to live IAD free? There will be no IAD if God's loving through you, filling you with his joy, peace, and he's creating in you patience, kindness, and goodness. There will be no IAD. IAD is simply a lack of the fruit of the Spirit. We do not generate these by effort or willpower, okay? Next time we're in a meeting together and a brother admits that he acted out or that he was abusive with IAD towards his partner, the answer is not, you need to try harder. The answer is not, you need accountability. The answer is not, you need to work the steps. All of those are helpful, but the real answer, the IAD insurance, the insurance that we won't act out again, is God's life flowing through us like this with our consistent effort of meditating and ruminating on truth. So another word we could use right here for meditate is ruminate, self-talk, but here's another word. Because everyone has these. Everyone has mantras. Mantras are, it's an old Sanskrit word. It literally means tool of the mind. It's exactly what it's no different from meditation. It is some kind of core principle that we keep repeating over and over. That is a mantra. Everyone has mantras. And your mantras determine who you become. They determine your relationship. They determine your reality. All of us have mantras or meditation or rumination. All of us have self-talk. Here are some of the mantras that you need to check. Because some of us, these are our mantras right now. Here's a mantra. She's trying to control me. That's a mantra. Another one. My life is not my own anymore. My life feels out of control. Here's another mantra. She will never heal, or she will never trust me again. That's a mantra. Another one. If my partner would only blank, if she would only blank, then everything would be okay. That is a mantra. Another mantra. She expects too much. I can never please her. Nothing is ever good enough for her. Another mantra. She thinks she's better than me. She thinks she's smarter than me. Another mantra. I can't do anything right. Another mantra. She should be further along than she is right now. Another mantra. She was wrong. I'm right. This was unfair. Another mantra. I'm not getting credit for all the hard work I'm doing. Another mantra. Things are hopeless. Things will never change. Another mantra. I'm the victim. Another mantra. Why can't she let it go? The past is the past. Does this sound familiar? These are mantras. These are meditations. These always lead to this side all the time. If any of those are your mantra, I guarantee you, you're already acting in already. What I mean by acting in is you are creating a distance. You are pulling away. You are putting a wall between you and your partner. You're putting a wall between you and your higher power who wants to produce these things in you. And now you're blocking it with your mantras, with your meditation. Because what you're meditating on, your mantras are not God's truth. And so they're not going to produce the fruit of the Spirit in your life. All mantras will transform you, but only mantras that are God's truth will produce these fruit. Any other mantra, any other meditation is going to lean more towards this side of the spectrum. So, for those of you who are listening to the recording, I'm going to put this in the show notes. For those of you live in our conscious contact meeting, we have a document in the chat that I've been working on for about a month now. And I'm either going to call it my healing mantra or my corrective mantra, but it is something that I'm currently memorizing so that I can ruminate, I can meditate, I can do self-talk, which is actually God talk, no matter where I am, no matter what time of day it is. Some of my most intrusive thoughts and thinking that I have is when I wake up in the middle of the night. And I can never trust my thoughts in the middle of the night. But by memorizing this healing or corrective mantra, because it's healing my mind and correcting all the mantras that I've had that I just listed to you, all the absolutes that I used to ruminate on, like she's never going to heal, we're never going to change, I can never do enough for her, all of these mantras that will destroy the fruit of the Spirit and my relationship and keep me over here. I needed to correct those. I needed a new meditation that's based on God's truth. And so you'll notice at the bottom of the document all the verses from scripture that I used to write this. Now, I also applied a little bit of science to it, because what the literature shows when it comes to self-talk is a lot of our self-talk, especially if it's self-talk directed towards us, we use first-person language. And we will say things to ourselves that we would never say third person to a friend. I'm such an idiot. I'm such a loser. I'm such a failure. I'm such a monster. I can't do anything. When we change it to third person, which is what I did in this document, we usually have a softer approach and it has a bigger impact on our limbic system, which is where our shame is housed and where our wounding is stuck. And so we want to do our meditation in such a way that it is, in essence, being spoken over us and being spoken to us. So I wrote this healing mantra in such a way that it is all the verses where God talks about how he sees me, how he feels about me, and how he relates to me. I put them in third person as if God is speaking over me. And I'm committing it to memory. And I'm about 3/4 of the way through right now. But I want to memorize the whole thing so that I can leverage this meditation anytime, anywhere, no matter what's going on. Because I want to experience the fruit of the Spirit, and it comes by meditating on God's truth. And that mantra is a collection, a summary, a synthesis of God's truth of how he feels about me, how he feels about you. It is an incredible way to offset shame. And the reason I say that is because shame began with something that someone else said about us, but it is sustained by what we now say about ourselves. So it is self-talk. It started as a message someone gave us, a significant other, but then we sustained it on our own. It became our own script. Shame is self-talk. And what I have found is the best counter to shame in our life is not more self-talk or different self-talk. It's God talk. What does my creator say about me? Because if I truly believe that this is God's truth, that this is truly how God feels about me,
then his voice carries more weight than what my dad said about me, than what that coach said about me, than what my wife says about me, than what I say about me. Because what does my creator say about me? And that trumps every other opinion, including my own opinion of myself. And here's what the Gottmans found in their research. It takes 20 corrective experiences in our limbic system to undo one damaging experience. So if you think about all the times that we have had self-talk that was shame-filled, there needs to be a 20-to-1 ratio of God talk that's going on towards ourself to undo what the self-talk did over the past decades. So we're talking about consistently, day and night, speaking truth into our life, replacing our mantras, replacing our meditations. It's not if you're going to meditate, it's what are you going to meditate on? Because you're meditating day and night already. It's just what is the source of the meditation? And you're going to become what you meditate on. What are you becoming right now? How's that working for you? Do you like the person you're becoming? Are you becoming more and more like God and his attributes? Or are you looking more and more like self and those attributes? So earlier this week, I did something with my partner. We kind of had a imago light conversation, just a kind of a informal conversation, but I wanted to make sure that she received this and that she heard this. And so I asked her if I could speak this mantra, this healing mantra over her. And I asked her to close her eyes. And I said, I want you to just imagine, everything I'm going to share with you comes from scripture. I want you to just imagine that this is God speaking this over you. And it was such a spiritually intimate moment where I took this document and I took the part that I had memorized, and we both just closed our eyes. I got close to her ear and I whispered this healing mantra over her. And it was an incredibly bonding moment for us and a healing moment for both of us. Here's the deal. This mantra, or any other mantra that you use, it only works if you believe it. It only works if you believe that this is true, that this is really what God thinks and says and believes and feels about me. If you don't, then it doesn't have any impact. You have to see it as truth. And what that requires is faith. And so one thing that our program teaches about faith is simply this. It's acting as if. It's acting as if something's true. So is that not faith? Acting as if this thing, it's kind of a theory, kind of a concept, kind of a topic that I'm wrestling with, but I'm going to act as if this is true. That is faith. It's something that I can't see, I can't prove. I'm going to act as if it's true. That's faith. So here's my challenge to you. Take this mantra, or if you don't want to use this mantra, take a meaningful verse from scripture, meditate on it, memorize it, make it your new mantra. Do this for 30 days consistently. Memorize it so that you can use it at 2 a.m. when you wake up and you have those ridiculous thoughts. Memorize it so that you can speak it to yourself when you're having a difficult conversation with your partner. Memorize it so that it's the first thing out of your lips or the first self-talk that you have when you wake up in the morning, and it's the last thing you say to yourself when you go to bed at night, and just see what happens. See if you begin to see some of God's attributes being produced in you. See if you see growth. See if you see a movement away from these characteristics. If it doesn't work, I'll be glad to refund you your misery. But I have a hunch that this is going to make a big impact for you.